Today, we will be presenting the Food Systems Countdown to 2030 initiative and its first assessment of global food systems. I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues from FAO, Cornell University College of Ag and Life Sciences, Johns Hopkins, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub, CARE, and of course, the Columbia Climate School here at Columbia University in New York City, who's hosting this webinar. Just before we get started, a couple of just information bits. We've published a paper that you can find in Nature Food and a companion policy report on the Food Systems Countdown this past December. You can find it at foodcountdown.org. We'll also be posting this webinar and the slides that are presented during this webinar on that website, and we'll put that in the chat. If you have questions, we'll have time at the end, so please put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll see how many we can get to. My name is Jess Fanzo. I am a professor of climate at the Columbia Climate School, and also the co-chair of the Food Systems Countdown initiative, along with 3 other co-chairs who you'll be hearing from, as well as our lead on the paper that we published this past December, Kate Schneider. We have a fantastic lineup today. Thank you again for joining. I'm going to kick it off by introducing Lawrence Haddad, my friend and colleague. He's the executive director of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, also known as GAIN. I think many of you might know Lawrence if you work at all in the food systems world. He was at IFPRI, he was at IDS, he led the Global Nutrition Report, is a World Food Prize winner, and is the co-chair, along with myself, of the Food Systems Countdown Initiative. Lawrence, over to you, and thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you everyone for joining. We have a great lineup for you. I'm going to get out the way as soon as I can. That's my job, is to get out the way of the really interesting speakers. I just want to go over the agenda very quickly with you. First of all, we're going to talk about why do we even need this countdown initiative. Then you'll hear from one of the co-chairs on what it is. Then you'll hear about the results of the first countdown paper and benchmark. And then we'll have a couple of perspectives, user perspectives. Remember, we're doing this because we want people to use the countdown. So we'll have a user perspective from NGOs, a user perspective from the UN. Then we'll have a reflection from the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub, who we are developing a strategic partnership with. And then we'll have 20 minutes preserved for audience Q&A. Of course, you're welcome to put in questions all the way through this seminar, and we will endeavor collectively to answer them in the middle of the meeting as we go along. I just want to say something really basic. I mean, if you want something to change, we all want our food systems to change. Well, maybe we don't all want them to change, because actually they're working pretty well for some people. But for people who care about good health and the environment, and decent jobs, and gender equity, they're not working terribly well. In fact, they're working pretty badly. So what we're trying to do, all of us on this call, we're all interested in transforming or changing food systems. And if you don't measure the change, how on earth are you ever going to know if you are succeeding in changing? It's really as simple as that. Of course, the devil is in the details, as you will see. I think this initiative is possibly the best initiative out there. It's the most complete, the most rigorous initiative out there to assess and monitor food system change. Of course, it's far from perfect. There's lots of things we'd like to improve and collect data for and have indicators for, and they will be unveiled as we go through the agenda. So without further ado, I'm going to ask, I think, Alison to play a short video that from the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Amina, Mohammed, on the need for the Countdown Initiative. Alison. Volume, please. No volume.
Dear Lawrence, friends, ladies and gentlemen, at the halfway mark of the 2030 agenda, progress against the Sustainable Development Goals is worryingly slow. We are falling behind with only 15% of our targets on track that are to be met by 2030. Unsustainable agricultural practices are exacerbating the climate crises, depleting our soils, accelerating biodiversity loss, and damaging communities. Within the 6 years that we have left, working on the key transitions across food systems, energy, digitalization, education, climate change, and the environment, to add to that decent jobs and social protection as an integrated framework for action, this is our best chance of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Ladies and gentlemen, transforming our food systems is key to reversing the trends that undermine our ability to achieve our collective goals of addressing poverty, improving food security and nutrition outcomes, but also tackling climate change, securing decent livelihoods, and achieving the SDGs by 2030. But we will get absolutely nowhere without knowing where we are and what our destination is. We must establish a clear direction of travel. First, we must invest in measuring progress. Thanks to the Food Systems Countdown Initiative, which emerged from the UN Food Systems Summit, we will be able to develop strong independent indicators and science-based approaches to close the data gap and track the food system transformation at the level it matters most in countries. These measurement capacities are of strategic importance for countries that are seeking to monitor implementation against their national pathways, and they will enable us to course correct and use our resources in the most effective and efficient way. And so I'm calling on all actors, both in the public and private sector, to support this initiative. Second, in partnership building, we need strong, genuine partnerships across the public and private sector, from smallholder farmers to policymakers and governments to multinational private sector entities. We need a whole of society approach to foster solutions and transform our food systems. And I'd like to commend the growing partnership between the Food Systems Countdown Initiative and the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub, which will support national food system conveners in introducing or even improving national measurement systems for food system transformation. This collaboration will also ensure a robust Secretary General report on the state of the world's food systems as we track towards the Summit of the Future in September this year and the UN Food Systems Summit +4 in 2025. Lastly, we must ensure that this data and information leads to transparent and open engagement with both the public and private sectors, especially those who hold outsized power across agriculture and food supply chains. Together, working in partnership, we can make great strides. I wish all of you every success with this seminar and look forward to hearing the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. And that was a really interesting video from the DSG, Deputy Secretary General. Know where we are. We need to know where we are, and we need to know where we're going. The countdown can promote transparency, and it can try to make the monitoring of food systems at the country level much more straightforward, and therefore to hold actors accountable and to help guide them to do the right thing at the right time, at the right pace. Let me pass over now to Mario Herrero. Mario is a professor at Cornell University, and he is one of the co-chairs of the Food System Countdown Initiative, and he's going to spend 5 minutes telling us what is the Countdown Initiative. Over to you, Mario.
Thanks, Lawrence. Let me share my slides. Yeah, well, thanks, colleagues. It's a real pleasure to be here with you on behalf of 30 institutions so far. We are a collective working on behalf of everybody interested in food systems, all the stakeholders. And we came up with the idea of the Food Systems Countdown as on the back of the UN Food Systems Summit, which focused really on the global attention on food systems. You will have also seen that the COP this year was also highlighting food systems. So this couldn't have come at a better time for the world. The Food System Summit focused on the tracks that you see here on the right, and what we've tried to do is to supplement what the Food Systems Summit tried to do while developing the National Food Systems Transformation Pathways. This has been really, really important for many countries and stakeholders, as you know, for the first time, we have at least an idea of how to go about creating a roadmap for transforming food systems. But what's the issue? Well, the issue is that it's great to have the roadmaps, but an essential part of this is to actually be able to monitor progress. So what we set about was to try to develop a monitoring system and trying to do it across all domains possible, going all the way from nutrition to the environment to governance. And we produced a series of 50 indicators that would comprehensively address this. We tried also to develop something that would actually create annual updates. It's very, very important for us to try to actually monitor the food system to provide actionable evidence, to track progress, guide decision makers, and inform the transformation. But at the same time, we know that we are not working in a vacuum. There's also a range of other monitoring and tracking systems, and we want to be complementary. We want to share indicators. We want to be able to compare how things are going in different countries and with these different indicators. So that was also an essential outcome of what we wanted to achieve here. At the same time, you know, this is not easy. There's still a lot to do in terms of advancing the science of food systems. That's why we need to vet indicators. That's why we actually really need to start analyzing all the complexity of the food systems and, you know, the interrelationships, the interactions of different parts of the food system, understand much better how we can actually create change. So in essence, what can the Food Systems Countdown offer? First of all, we at least put out there a conceptual framework for food systems monitoring. We have a set of indicators that has been legitimized through a consultative process. We are over 70 scientists working with all sorts of dimensions and other stakeholders of the food system. So this has actually provided a significant way of vetting what we are doing. We have a menu of indicators that are relevant at the country level, and we're not saying that everybody needs to use the 50 indicators. Maybe at least the suite of indicators that we have can serve as a reference point for monitoring some key aspects that certain countries would really like to meet. And fundamentally, we also created a baseline data to track progress. This is super important, and you know, I see a lot of people in this webinar. For me, and for all of us, it is essential to engage you. You are also part of the countdown, and we need your knowledge, your science, your data, everything. Just please contact us, and we'll make sure that your voice is heard. Now I'm going to pass the floor to Kate Schneider. Oh, Lawrence, yes?
Pass back to me, Mario. I'll take everyone through.
Perfect.
Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So Mario, thank you. Thank you for emphasizing the fact that there are over 70 scientists. I must say they're all scientists or researchers from research institutes or universities from all over the world, and from 30 plus organizations. The group started out in the 5 different action tracks, the UN Food System Summit, supplemented by some from the science group, but then augmented by different skills, disciplines, perspectives, geographies that we felt were missing. So thank you, Mario, for emphasizing the consultative process that we went through. It was a slow process, and I was often wishing it was faster, but I'm glad we took our time and got wide buy-in. Now let me turn over to Kate Schneider. Kate is Dr. Kate Schneider. Kate is a research scholar at Johns Hopkins University, and really she's been driving this whole process certainly at the operational level, getting things done, making sure indicators are selected, consultations are happening, data is analyzed, the results are being written up, dealing with the journal, dealing with the multiple revisions, all of those things, science, psychotherapy, and a whole lot more. Kate, over to you. You've got about 12 minutes to present these results.
Pleasure to be here and to be able to share with you all the results from our very first paper. Hopefully you can see my screen here. Thank you for that really kind introduction. I'm Kate Schneider from Johns Hopkins University, and it's really been my privilege to be leading some of the analysis and leading the data team for the last several years. As Lawrence said, this has been a process to get to these indicators, and certainly painfully slow at times, but as Mario pointed out, that let us make sure that this was really a legitimate consultative process. So what you see here is the timeline that we have been on and our vision for where we're going. The objective here is to contribute to our understanding of food systems as they help us achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and other related global goals and targets. And so our vision is really about how can we put and keep food systems central to the conversation as we lead towards 2030. So where we are right now, that we have just published this state of the food systems baseline here in 2023, after a 2-year process of selecting the indicators. We started back in 2021 with an architecture. So this was the framework we set out. What are the major themes? And within each of those, what are the subcomponents that need to be monitored? So what you see here are the 5 themes that we landed on, as Mario already introduced. So we call each of these kind of largest bolded headline areas the thematic area, and the smaller subcomponents, their indicator domains, and we selected indicators within each of those domains. So you'll hear me use that vocabulary over the next couple of minutes. And so we have 3 areas that are outcomes of food systems. That's diets, nutrition, and health, environment, natural resources, and production, livelihoods, poverty, and equity. And then we have 2 cross-cutting areas, governance and resilience. And you can see here under each of those, the indicator domains that were in our original architecture. And then over those 2 years, what we have done is get to the process of picking the 50 indicators that we'll show you in a few moments. Just a little bit more about that process. It was really critical for us that this was both transparent and inclusive, but also rigorous. And so first, we went through a multi-stage process that involved a wide range of stakeholders. We're a collaboration of nearly 60 scientists from across many institutions, but we also reached out to dozens of other scientists and hundreds of policy stakeholders. We started ourselves with our own identification of a long list of indicators, everything possible that is out there that could be included in the countdown. We put that long list through an initial set of screening criteria. We said the indicators had to be feasible to be measured, to continue to be measured. They couldn't just be conceptual with no pathway to actual data. There had to be coverage across at least 70 countries, because our ambition here is to say something about the world's food systems, and the methodology behind them had to be sufficiently transparent. So that narrowed us down quite a bit, and we took the medium-sized list that emerged from that initial screening into the consultative process, which we sent out to dozens of other scientists via a survey, and which we engaged hundreds, over 500 policy stakeholders in regional consultations around the world. And that led us to the final list of indicators, which are 50 indicators. And I just like to point out that 12 of those indicators actually were introduced as a result of the consultative process. And so it wasn't just a narrowing process, but the consultation was essential in making sure that we identified gaps from our own perspective, because we are many scientists, but we're still not all the possible perspectives that could exist out there. So the consultation was essential. Just to give you a brief flavor of where we landed, what you see here is an example from the environment, natural resources, and production theme. You see all of the indicators that have been selected with a description. You can find these in this table of indicators for all of the themes in the policy report, which is at our website, and I'll have the link to that up here at the end of my slides. Just to give you a second flavor here, these are the indicators that were selected for governance. I'm not going to painfully put all of these up here, but I wanted to give you a sense of what indicators are included under at least a few of the themes, so you can start to get a bit more of a feel for the framework of indicators that we've put together. I like to point out here about the governance indicators that some of these are specific to food systems and others relate to the necessary enabling environment for food system transformation. This architecture also maps very closely to the themes and action areas of the food system transformation pathways. And so here I've used a third theme. So again, you get an opportunity to see the specific indicators that were selected. In this case, these are the diet, nutrition, and health indicators and how they align to the pathways that have been put together by countries. And this is really critical because the UN Food Systems Summit process was enormously inclusive and has a lot of country buy-in, and we were really keen to make sure that everything we did here was an additional contribution on top of that and would be immediately relevant and useful to countries with the pathways that they were already in the process of developing. So finally, this is some of the baseline analysis. Here we've looked at all the 50 indicators across income groups. And what we've done here is we've looked at them relative to a global mean by thematic area, and we've aligned these to a desirable direction of change. So it's important to point out that it wasn't immediately obvious where is the best level of every indicator, where is a target, where is a desirable area that we want to get to. That's actually an entire body of research that's going to take us another 2 years. We've already started, but it wasn't what we were aiming to do with this initial baseline. And so all we're doing here is comparing countries to each other against the current spectrum of where countries are. And we have looked at every single indicator and just identified is more better or is less better. And that's the only extent to which we have made any sort of assessment of where countries are so far. And so what you can take away from this picture here is that food system success really isn't entirely synonymous with country income. If that were true, the dark blue lines, those represent high income countries. All of those would be to the right of the global mean. They would all be aligned to the right side of this figure. And you see that that's simply not the case. And so we have opportunities to learn from low income countries where some things are really going better there than they are in the higher income countries. An example would be high-income countries are really not performing great on consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages or pesticide use. There's also a couple of indicators that have really unclear income patterns. And so the point is that transforming food systems is not just about income. To see from a different perspective, this is country-level analysis where we've taken every single country and we've ranked them. It again aligns to the desirable direction of change from top ranking to bottom ranking on every single indicator. And then we've taken an average at the country level of their ranking within each theme, and that's what you see in this figure here. And so then we can see who are the countries that are doing better than their income group peers. And that lets us know sort of who is doing better than might be expected based on country income alone. So a great example to point out here are Mozambique and Uganda. They are low-income countries, but on these indicators, they're really ranking near the global median, unlike any of their other income group peers. So they clearly have something for us to learn from there. This is what we have from the baseline analysis, and the last section of my presentation here is really to focus on what don't we have, where are the gaps. So when we look over time, this is all the indicators down the y-axis and all the countries across the x-axis, even though you can't see the names of them. And the darkest cells tell us where we have the most data points from 2020 to 2021. And so you can see that it's really uneven. We have a decent amount of data for a lot of the agricultural indicators, and mostly this is thanks to FAO, who have been collecting these key indicators all the way back to the 1960s. Where we have big gaps are around issues of diet quality, livelihoods, and resilience. We also have a number of other data gaps on concepts where the data can't support creating an indicator to measure this concept yet that meets our criteria. So things like, what's the economic value of food systems? Understanding workers in food systems and their welfare outcomes. What are the productivity measures of parts of the food system that are not agriculture? We've measured productivity in agriculture for decades. We don't really have a good sense from the other parts of the food value chain or agri-food value chains. We don't know anything about what are the policies needed and how they need to go together. What is the level of policy coherence and across what areas to get to food systems transformation? The true cost of food would incorporate the cost of externalities of the food system, and we don't have much understanding there. Food loss and waste, those are indicators under development, but they are not yet at the point where we can look across the world for enough countries. Budgetary allocations to food systems and food safety are other gaps. So a couple of key takeaways. What we have learned from looking across the world's food system is that no country excels on everything. And the implication there is that we can all learn from each other. And the opportunities, especially through the Food Systems Summit and the dialogues that it convened, was the perfect catalyst to start getting those conversations going. Not all food system indicators track to income. And so we really do need dedicated monitoring and transformation agendas that are specific to food systems. What we have to offer here is an actionable, holistic set of data. So decision makers can use these to guide and prioritize their actions and monitor impacts, and also take them as a starting point to tailor things at the country level to be most relevant. And then we've also identified what are the most critical data gaps that we really have to fill in order to get a complete picture of the world's food systems. And with that, I'll conclude and say thank you. You can find us at foodcountdown.org. You can find our scientific publication and our report, and the executive summary of our report has been translated into 6 other languages that you can find all at our website. And back to you, Lawrence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. We are beautifully on time. My own favorites for filling the gaps are the ones on budgetary allocations. Don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me your budgets. And the other one is around policy. If we can get policy to be changing, we know that we at least have a chance at changing some of the outcomes we're interested in, but which take a lot longer to change. So we need some more of those kind of leading indicators that tell us change is happening, even if the final indicators are not yet moving. Kate, that was really great. Thank you so much for that. And Kate, there are a couple of questions in the Q&A about the overlaps with the SDGs, and I've been telling people that you will answer those. So sorry to put you on the spot. Now, as I said earlier, we want the countdown has to be used by different groups, and one of the key groups is civil society, NGOs, and we're very lucky to have Christine Campeau here from CARE. She's the Global Policy Director and the Food and Nutrition Systems, and she was a lead of Action Track 4 in the UN Food System Summit. Christine, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I join you today to talk about the influence of data in international development, with a specific emphasis on the role of civil society organizations such as CARE. In an era defined by global challenges such as hunger, malnutrition, climate change, civil unrest, harnessing the power of data not only becomes a necessity, but it becomes our beacon, guiding us towards effective policies and inclusive societies. Data is more than just numbers. It's our compass. It enables us to pinpoint regions and communities most in need. Now, I have the privilege to work for CARE, which is an organization that fights against global hunger and poverty in more than 110 countries around the world. We focus our efforts on women and girls because they are most disproportionately affected by poverty. Would you believe that in 2012, 0 humanitarian responses were using data from women to make immediate decisions? Now, that's standard practice in every humanitarian crisis. By delving into the comprehensive analysis of agricultural production, food distribution, consumption patterns, as well as producer and worker rights, we gain insights that steer us towards interventions that ensure that resources are deployed where the need is paramount. However, the true power of data lies in its ability to tell compelling stories. Numbers and statistics, when woven into narratives, have the capacity to convey messages of the profound challenges faced by food insecure communities. In the hands of civil society organizations, these data-driven stories become advocacy tools that resonate with policymakers, donors, and the general public, fostering support for common interests from human rights to equitable food distribution. Data not only helps us identify the source of the problem, but empowers us policymakers, advocates, and implementers like CARE to design evidence-based programs to address the challenges. And by scrutinizing trends over time, CARE identifies successful interventions that can be replicated in similar contexts. And the data allows us to continuously adapt our projects to ensure that we're having the intended effect. This approach ensures that strategies are not only effective, but also adaptive, aligning with the dynamic nature of food systems and societal needs. Civil societies also acts as our global conscience, the watchful eye, the amplifier of community voice. So by engaging with data, organizations like mine can provide an independent and critical perspective on the effectiveness of policies and interventions. We use data to expose gaps in implementation and to advocate for policies that are inclusive, responsive to local needs, and align with the principles of social justice. Moreover, data empowers civil society organizations to mobilize public support, cultivating a sense of collective responsibility within communities. With the Food System Countdown Initiative, which I'm very honored to be a contributor to, we use the analysis developed per country to encourage the much needed change at national and local level through our country offices. However, let's be honest, civil society organizations also have to be accountable to our approaches. We have the privilege to work with a diverse set of actors, from UN agencies to academia to local governments, allied civil society and social movements, and companies. So we routinely rely on accurate data to guide these partnerships we pursue and the approaches we utilize in our programming. Now, while we know that women and girls are most affected by hunger, they're also the architects of the solution. However, their roles aren't recognized in global data and global solutions on hunger. For example, in the Food System Countdown Initiative, one of the indicators that we use is female landholding, but that statistic is getting more and more difficult to access and to measure. More generally, there's not enough global data on the links between gender and food, full stop. Of all the major data sets in the world, only the SDGs provides a platform to look at sex disaggregated data around food systems and agriculture production. And even those data sets don't allow us to look at the differences between boys and girls under the age of 15. If women and girls aren't counted, we're not considered. But this is a problem we can solve for. For example, at CARE, we've created rapid gender analysis, which allows women in crisis situations to lift up their voices and concerns. And we use that data from women to change the way that we do our humanitarian response. Another example in 2020 is the Women Respond Project, where we ask women what they were experiencing during COVID-19. And their answers changed the way that CARE responded throughout the crisis, because we listened to what women told us what worked. Would you believe that of the 84 global policies and plans designed to address hunger in 2020 and 2021, only 4% recognize women as leaders who should be part of the solutions? 39% overlook women entirely. These data gaps are translated into real gaps in policy response. And as a result, global solutions are not keeping pace with the magnitude of the problem, because we continue to overlook the importance of gender equality. And the same can be said for producers, workers, and the many, many others who keep our food systems working. So let us embrace the full power of data, acknowledging its role as a catalyst for change. And let's superimpose the human impact story, the experience, the guidance that we're receiving from our communities with that data to get a full picture of how societies are responding and evolving. By bundling the quantitative and the qualitative data, we're able to provide that much needed full picture to develop comprehensive solutions. We also need more and consistent disaggregated data to shed light on the inequalities so that they can be meaningfully addressed. Only then can we truly build equitable food systems that benefit all. Thank you for your time and interest.
Thank you, Christine. And thank you for reminding us that behind every number is a complex set of stories involving human beings, often human beings in distress. And for those of us collecting and using the numbers, we often forget that and cannot really experience it either. So thanks for that. And thank you for also focusing us in on gender equity issues. And I think you've given us some really good feedback and good input on how to make the indicators as gender disaggregated as possible. And several of them are, especially the diet ones. But I know we can count on you, Christine, to keep us focused on disaggregation, not just by gender, but by other dimensions. So thank you. Another user group is the UN. There have already been questions about how do these indicators map into the SDGs. Piero, we have Piero Conforti. Piero is the Deputy Director in the Statistics Division at FAO and a key contributor to this work. Piero, over to you.
Many thanks, Lawrence. Many thanks to everyone, the participants. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. A user's perspective from the UN. Now, this is a very interesting initiative that is in a way consistent with a more general change of mindsets that we have been going through and we are still going through in this period, essentially moving away from a sectoral perspective in which we consider here agriculture, here food security, here fisheries, here forestry, and make an effort to think of all this as one holistic concept of agri-food system in which everything is related. This is what the Food System Countdown Initiative is helping us doing through the provision of data on different dimensions that, of course, are deeply interrelated. Now, this change of mindset, it is essential from our point of view. As we, as a UN technical agency, run our activities of supporting policy analysis, design, and development and implementation at national and subnational level, all the way up to the global level. This is a key element of change. So we have to try and look at all these different perspectives as the Food System Countdown Initiative is proposing to try and cater effectively, allow the global agri-food system to cater effectively for all these different kind of functions that societies are assigning to it. So the food system transformation requires this kind of mindset. Now, let me stress that going from a sectoral perspective to a holistic approach is something extremely concrete in our work, and we can easily find a couple of examples to consider. Takes, for instance, employment. So traditionally, we were focusing on employment in agriculture, in terms of the opportunities for generating employment in agriculture, for generating high quality employment, for looking at what are the bottlenecks and the obstacles that prevent agriculture to supply enough of high quality job. Of course, if we don't consider the wider system of activities that agriculture is integrated into, we might be missing actually key elements of the picture that doesn't allow us to effectively suggest how to generate employment in this context. We may see that bottlenecks sometimes may be outside of the sector or may be related to the sector in a way that has to do with the use and the way the products of agriculture are integrated with the rest of the supply chain. Hence, the importance of considering, as the Food System Countdown Initiative is doing, employment in the whole agri-food system as one element, as one piece of information that we can look at country and hopefully more and more in a granular way at the subnational level as an element for designing and implementing policies. Other examples, for instance, the greenhouse gas emission. Again, we can look at agriculture per se, as we traditionally used to do. With the kind of approach that the Food System Countdown Initiative is promoting, we are trying to look at the whole production chain so as to understand how much emissions are generated by different choices that stretch across from agriculture all the way into the sectors that are downstream in the production of food and fibers. This is extremely important because, of course, the two things are deeply interrelated. So we might be missing some key elements of the picture if we would only look at separately these elements in a way. And at the same time, working on the interaction between what happens in different dimensions of on different aspects of the food systems may, again, make us lose some key trade-offs that we need to look at. So here is the importance of looking at together this initiative when we actually operationalize this kind of data. Moreover, I have to say, of course, the UN as a whole also works a lot with the SDG and its monitoring system. This is a system that was designed by member countries and on which we as FAO hold many responsibilities as custodian agencies, so trying to, and of course, the monitoring framework is extremely rich. It has a lot of indicators already. However, initiatives like the Food System Countdown trying to go beyond that logic, go beyond the logic of the single indicators and trying to build more analytics around this. This, I think, is the main benefit, let alone the fact that the initiative itself has ways to allow more dialogue between us as users of the information and sometimes on some occasion also providers. But I mean, it is important as an opportunity also to be in touch and establish a good dialogue with communities of science and practice that go beyond the UN as such. So there is an element of good cross-fertilization. And finally, I think an element that should not be never be overlooked is the importance of advocating for more and better information to be collected, for more capacity to be built, especially if we want the type of granular information that do really allow to generate good policy decision. Before it was mentioned extensively, the issue of sexist aggregated data. We are striving to get not only those kind of disaggregations, but even more disaggregations in terms of space, in terms of different types of communities and human beings that we ultimately want the agri-food system to be able to cater in different domains. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Piero. I think it was really interesting the points you made about the trade-offs between the different indicators and the fact that we need to make different data sets kind of complementary and not competing. And I think it's really key for us to have FAO as a partner for that reason and for many others. So thank you for your comments. Jose, I think we are now at the end of, oh no, Sylvia, sorry, Sylvia, how could I forget you? And we're right on time as well. In her video, Amina Mohammed, the DSG, mentioned the emerging strategic partnership with the UN Food System Coordination Hub. And we're really lucky to have Sylvia Ekra here, who's the Deputy Director of that UN Food System Coordination Hub, to give us some reflections and thoughts about the Countdown Initiative. Over to you, Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, and really delighted to be here. And I would like to thank you and your two other co-chairs of the Countdown Initiative for picking up that part of the unfinished business of the summit. I think this is a really critical piece. I'd like to highlight very quickly 5 points that I heard from the speakers before me, and I think are really important, and then I'd say a few words about this strategic partnership between the initiative and the hub that you just mentioned. I think first point is really the need. It is clear without any doubt that this is a critical need at the country level. In all our engagements with national conveners, they keep telling us that they have this gap in terms of data, in terms of information that can orient and guide action, in terms of understanding what to prioritize, what are the interactions between the different elements of the agenda, and also how to monitor progress. So from the Secretary General report that we issued ahead of the stock-taking moment last July, we know that at least 63% of countries have the ambition to introduce or to improve information management systems in relation to food systems transformation and to the implementation of their national pathways. So really, this is the right moment for us to lend this initiative at the country level and support national conveners in their efforts to implement the national pathways. The second point that I want to mention, and we've heard it many times before from Mario, but also from Piero, is the complementarity with the SDGs monitoring frameworks. It's really important that as we socialize the countdown initiative at the country level, it is really clear for national conveners, for decision makers and other practitioners that this is not operating in silo from the Agenda 2030, but that it is complementary because, as Piero was saying before, it goes deeper in aspects of food systems transformation. And I think we're not forgetting, as the DSG said in the video that we saw before, that food systems transformation is one of the 6 key transitions to advance and accelerate the implementation of all the SDGs. So complementarity is very important. The third element is about the systems approach that is extremely difficult for countries to introduce. We know that we have sectorial architectures in countries, including for monitoring and evaluation and monitoring progress. And really, with the Countdown Initiative, what we are showing is what it can look like. How do we make sure that we are looking at all the subsets of indicators? And are we also rallying an ecosystem around that? So what we would like to see is really the scientists at the country level. I think you've been extremely inclusive, extremely participatory in the process. We would like to see the same at country level with scientists, but also with statistical offices, ministries of planning, ministries of finance joining this effort. Of course, we have some concerns about the lack of data. This is my 4th point. We've heard about data lacking to monitor what is happening with the well-being and the welfare and the livelihood of workers beyond agriculture. We've heard from Christine also about the issue of gender data. We also have to really give a very, very specific look to what is happening in the seeds and what is happening in the fragile states. I think this is data that we need so that we can really tailor the support that we are providing and understanding what are the dynamics in these specific clusters of countries. 5th is the universality, because what the first report is telling us is that no country has the monopoly of success, and that income is not an indicator of faster transformation or better transformation. So it's really an equalizer of global south and global north. And some countries are doing better in that race to the top. And I think what would be really interesting is to use those countries to inspire others. We've heard about Uganda, we've heard about Mozambique and Nigeria. And how do we make sure that those front runners can inspire countries that are similarly situated and that are not necessarily as advanced as they are in their transformation efforts? So the partnership with the hub between the Countdown 2030 initiative and the hub is really to further socialize the Countdown 2030, including at the country level with the national conveners, but with also other actors, to make sure that there is, first of all, the information out there that there is a system that they can get inspiration from. We are looking at flexibility. The point is really not to impose the full set of indicators on countries, but to give them a sense and a flavor of what a holistic monitoring framework looks like. I think there is a lot of demand for technical assistance in that area. So we're also looking at, through our strategic partnership, to be creating an alliance of actors and partners who can respond in a timely manner to those requests for technical assistance. We would love to partner to pilot Countdown 2030 at the country level in more countries and learn from that. And finally, making sure that through having harmonized data, as well as a baseline, we can have an even stronger Secretary General's report ahead of the UNFSS +4 in 2025. So with that, Lawrence, I'm giving the floor back to you. Happy to take questions, if any. Over.
Sylvia, thank you. Great questions, great comments, great reflections, great 5 points. I especially picked up on the Ministry of Planning and Finance. We've got to somehow socialize this idea with them, and ministries of statistics. I like the fact you reminded us no country, as the 50 indicators suggest, no country has figured this out in every domain. Every country, every region has its own strengths and weaknesses, but that means they can all learn from each other. And I think would be really good to begin to do some more analysis on the data. And of course, anyone can do this analysis because all these data are available for anyone to use. Be really good to start looking at which countries seem to be doing better across the profile of 50 indicators than others. Quite a few questions in the Q&A about is this indicator included, or is that indicator included? Just before I hand it over to Jose, just want to say, we thought the food system dashboard, for example, has over 300 indicators in it. But to get a manageable set of indicators, certainly at the global level, we thought 50 felt like a just about manageable set when you look at the 5 different domains. Many of the indicators I personally thought were very important to be in there didn't get in there, but that's what happens when you have an inclusive participatory process where the consensus emerges. But having said that, I no doubt some of these indicators, as we use them, we'll think, oh, that's not useful, and the users will think that's not useful, and some of them will drop out, and some new indicators will move in. The country countdowns, if they get started, then of course the countries can do whatever they want. They don't have to use the conceptual framework. They don't have to use the indicators we've identified. But hopefully the global countdown initiative will be an inspiration to them to say that you can get a set of 50 or 40 or 60 indicators that work for you at the country level and can be can be disaggregated at the subnational level, and it can be an inspiration, not a blueprint. But Jose, I'm going to now pass it over to you. We're 1 minute ahead of time. Jose is Jose Rosero Moncayo is Chief Statistician and the Director of the Statistics Division at FAO and one of the FSCI co-chairs. Jose, over to you.
Thank you, Lawrence, and good afternoon and good morning to you all. I'm very happy to be here, and I have this difficult task to manage the Q&A. So first, thank you very much for your participation. We have over 100 questions that have been posted in the Q&A, so that shows the level of interest that exists on this. My colleagues have been able to answer 68 of them, but there are many there open. I guess that my colleagues will be still busy trying to answer some of them. But in any case, let me use some of the ones that have been posted in order to try to organize this Q&A. And of course, at the moment that I will be doing the questions, I will invite all the panelists that are here, including my co-chairs, to participate in answering these questions. I have grouped the questions in many areas, okay, because I guess that all of them have different type of common denominators. And one set of questions that were different, many, but they were around the topic of the relationship with SDGs, okay? We have said basically, and my colleagues that preceded me were strengthening the point of the complementarities between what we have in the Food System Countdown Initiative and the SDG indicator framework. But there is a specific question that talks about this comprehensive review of the Sustainable Development Goal indicators that are happening. It will start, the process starts in 2024, but will be endorsed by the UN Statistical Commission in 2025. So there will be a review of the 234 SDG indicators. So the question is if there is any need, okay, or any kind of room of possibility to review to take advantage of the review of the SDG indicators, already trying to include some indicators that are related to food systems transformation. So I would like to have reflections on that. So let me see who wants to address that question. So I don't know if Piero, Jessica, Kate, do you want to give some thinking on that?
I think Kate could address that question, being that she's done a bit of analysis comparing the FSCI indicators to the SDGs and how that could be better aligned.
Go ahead, Kate.
Well, I'll just offer like a couple of reflections. We looked at the SDG indicators, and many of them are pieces of what you need to understand food systems, but there were just big gaps that we kind of had to fill in. And so we have 6 SDG indicators that are in our framework. And we have kind of looked at an alignment with the rest of the SDG indicators. I think the challenge is that taking a food systems perspective wasn't really part of the conversation at the time the SDGs were developed. And so even though we need food systems change to achieve all of the SDGs, there's sort of an implicit theory of change that those of us, all of you who are familiar with food systems, can kind of see the links, but they weren't explicit in the indicators. And so I think that's where our framework can be really helpful to fill in those gaps of what are the things that make food systems achieve their contribution to get to the goals and to the indicators that we can see in the SDG outcomes that we're hoping to achieve. I don't know if others want to add to that.
If I can add to that very briefly, at the end of the day, let's say, again, I do agree very much with the fact that at the time, the discourse about switching from agriculture as a sector to a more system-wide approach was less perhaps brought to the attention of the member countries that they developed the monitoring framework with the support from our side. But basically, if you look at agriculture in the SDGs and the related sector, you have something on sustainability, you have something on the smallholder, you have the whole food security issue, you have the issue of food loss and waste. But these are kind of islands, again, as it was mentioned. No? So the attempt here is to build something that looks a little bit more across the extent to which agri-food systems are capable of delivering livelihoods, of being sound from an environmental perspective, of being resilient, of delivering good diets, and et cetera, and all these elements of enjoying good governance. So again, the SDGs are important. We are all committed to that. These are a big breakthrough from the ability of many member countries to measure and monitor what's happening in their agri-food system. But the Food System Countdown Initiative goes a little bit beyond. It provides more of the analysis, more of the analytics, or at least laying a good ground for developing the analytics that connects all these elements. This is what I would add.
Thank you, Piero. But definitely, the comprehensive review of SDG indicators presents an opportunity, okay, to fill some data gap that the SDGs have, and some of them are relevant for food system transformation, especially in the area of quality of diets. We don't have indicators, SDG indicators that have to do with the quality of diets, and definitely the minimum dietary diversity indicator for women is one of them that FAO and several United Nations institutions have in mind in order to propose in this comprehensive review, and it's also an indicator that is part of this initiative. Okay, so moving along, okay, there is also, and it's again, it's about the relationship of this indicator framework with other set of indicators of other monitoring frameworks. And here, let me go to the CADEP. We have many questions about the relationship between our indicator framework of the CADEP and how we can use this indicator framework to inform this, what I understand that is also the revision of the CADEP that is happening very, very soon. Anyone wants to comment on that?
I can pick up a little bit on that.
Lorenz, go ahead, please.
So for the last 2 years, we have been working with CADEP, the AU, IFPRI, and AGRA on their annual State of African Agriculture, which is a report that's released at every AGRF, which is now the African Food System Forum. And for the last 2 years, we've been looking at the overlaps between the CAADP biannual indicators for agriculture and the Food System Countdown Initiative indicators. And there's quite a bit of overlap. Obviously, CAADP is about agricultural transformation, and food system transformation is not the same exactly as agricultural transformation. There is an overlap, of course, but food systems go way beyond agriculture, and they go way beyond hunger and poverty and income as outcomes. I think the challenge really is more of a political one than anything else, and I think it's going to be require quite a bit of diplomacy and quite a bit of socialization and quite a bit of a country-driven change to see a greater convergence between these two. But I understand CAADP leadership and the AU really want to move into the food system space, and they really want the CAADP indicators to better reflect food systems. But as this audience knows, every indicator has its fan club, and it's very difficult to drop an indicator. So the challenge for the CAADP team, I think, is to evolve the CAADP indicators into a food system set, but not letting it get too massive as it grows. Back to you, Jose.
Thank you, Lawrence. And let's move on. Now, there is another block of questions that have to do with data gaps. Okay, so let me try to summarize those questions in at least two. Okay, so, and I will say the two of them at the same time. So the first one is that our audience is eager to know what are potential concrete solutions in order to fill the data gaps that we have in the initiative. And the second is also the curiosity of our audience of what is the scope of using artificial intelligence for filling some of these critical data gaps.
Maybe I could start us out and get some additional. I mean, Jose and Piero, you obviously can talk a lot about, we could have whole seminars on data gaps, and Mario and others. I think there's kind of 3 levels of data gaps that we faced in the countdown, and I think many of us in research face. One is this disaggregation, whether it's a disaggregation of rural, peri-urban, urban, disaggregation of peoples that are impacted by food systems, or disaggregation of data subnationally in countries, and I saw a few questions around that. And in the countdown, that becomes a challenge because we're trying to find indicators where many countries have that data. But when we want to start disaggregating, we get less and less indicators that we can track across subnationally or across different disaggregating issues, which stymie prioritization of action. So big need for disaggregation. The second is there's just a lot of sector-specific data gaps. There's data gaps in diets, there's data gaps in the environment, there's a lot of data gaps in livelihoods, governance. You'll see many of the governance indicators are not food related, some are not at all, but are proxies or drivers of potentially looking at the behaviors and policies of food systems. And I would say the third call and data gap need is this idea of better technology. That could be AI and machine learning. That could be more real-time data, crowdsourced data. Our reaction time to intervene and act on food systems is difficult because some of the data is quite outdated. So we don't have a lot of very near or real-time data to be able to really understand what's happening with food systems if they get hit by a shock, et cetera. So those are really kind of the 3 areas. This disaggregation piece, just not enough data in certain sectors and disciplines, and then the inability to use some of the technology that's coming online now to be able to take more action on food systems in real time. I don't know if others want to contribute. Mario, go ahead.
I see, Mario. Go ahead.
Yeah, just very briefly, you know, we need to bring the food systems and the ag data to the 21st century. You know, other sectors are very effectively using AI to actually automatize many of the processes and gather information not necessarily from the usual suspects, but from a range of other sources that are available through, you know, that we might not know about. I think that the algorithms have actually matured enough so that we can actually use these platforms much more effectively to fill in data gaps, to do analysis, and to actually increase the response time, as Jess said. You know, on the issue of subnational data, I think that what we have is so patchy, but we have countries that have at least some good information. We really need to build the case of why we need this information so that we can actually start working with the necessary agencies to be able to collect data at subnational level. We've done a lot trying to do, you know, yields and productivity, and as a result, we can compute greenhouse gas emissions and water footprints and the rest, but that's all biophysical and doesn't include fundamental aspects of the food system. So if we could actually do the same for nutrition, for governance, and for the other elements, you know, we would really start looking at patterns and really be able to prioritize at certain regions where we actually need to deploy more resources than in others. So, you know, this is actually the start, but this is actually something that we need to go for.
Thank you, Mario. And definitely on this topic, we could talk a lot and spend like an hour on here, but we need to move on. We have many
Could I give
questions.
one example, Jose, before we move on?
Sure, okay, very quickly, please.
I think a really great example of recently filled data gaps are the Global Diet Quality Project indicators, which GAIN has been in the lead collecting around the world through the Gallup World Poll, and it's feasible, it's light touch, and it's something that could actually be done for the whole world, and we can actually finally for the first time get a picture of what people eat around the world. It was collected for 41 countries and is included in our indicators and in our baseline data set for those countries, but more countries are coming online with every year, and so each of our next reports and their own reports will have more data. And I think that's a really great example of taking a high priority issue and filling the data gap in the lowest cost way possible. And I think that is a great set of lessons to learn for filling the rest of these data gaps going forward.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, another set of questions have to do with the use of these indicators, the way that they can be used. So let me read two of them, okay? And of course, then I will open for responses. The first one have to do with how well we can use this type of indicators behind the Food System Countdown Initiative for local level research, okay? And especially how we can create country profiles and going beyond country profiles in order to advise for food system transformation in a more local way. A second one is a provocative one. I will call it a provocative one. And they are basically hinting, our audience is hinting to the possibility to measure food systems at the household level, at individual or household level. How basically we can go toward that type of direction, going from national level to local level, and from local level to household level and individual level. Floor is yours. Who wants to address that one?
I'll have a go if no one else wants to, but what do you think, Jose? Anyone else?
Go ahead, Lawrence, go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay, so on the local level one, you know, a lot of questions about country countdowns and subnational countdowns, and I again in the chat box, my own view is, you know, the country countdowns don't have to look like the global countdown. They should be hopefully inspired, informed, and guided, but the indicators, the number, the span, the specifics have to be relevant for the people who are making decisions about resource allocation. At the subnational level, there are now 8 subnational food system dashboards that in some of the country, and they're for big countries, Nigeria, Indonesia. I know those 2 are complete. India is in process. Kenya is in process. Pakistan is complete. There are a number. Bangladesh is in process. There are some big countries that are developing subnational dashboards, and I think they are all set up really to say, okay, a subset of these indicators will be our countdown, or whatever you want to call it. They'll be our way of monitoring food system transformation in our country. Whether this makes sense at the household level, it's a really good question. I hadn't thought about it. I mean, it sounds like a topic of multiple masters and PhD dissertations. Save the Children had maybe still do have a food economy model that works at the household level. I would imagine this could be adapted for food systems. In many ways, households are, of course, implicitly de facto. They have a food system. They have a food system frame. They don't need to have conceptual models in their heads to make sure that the way they buy, dispose, use food is healthy and environmentally sustainable. They just do it. So I think it could be really interesting to look at it at the household level. Back to you, Jose.
Thank you, Lawrence. I'm mindful at the time, but even then I would like to go with 2 additional questions. Probably that, I mean, Christine, you raise your hand. Do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in on the Food System Countdown Initiative and how, again, it is used. When we started thinking about what this could look like, a report that I refer to often that many of the people on this call helped champion was the Global Nutrition Report, and how these annual reports really help advocates, and because we can really push governments at all levels to have the change necessary. We can compare them to each other. We can have different scorecards. It's an excellent tool for us. And in the same way that a CARE would use that tool, we really use it all the way down to community level. So Abid, one of the contributors in the chat box asking all these questions, he's a mastermind on community scorecard system. So really, how are communities evaluating these policies and programs being put in place by government? So if we could have that full overview, then that's really how we're knowing if we're hitting the nail on the head. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, so let me just go for a last question, okay? And then we will close. Because I think that this is an important one, and I have seen that repeated by some of our audience. But this is about the criteria that we have to invite individual researchers, scientists to contribute to the Food System Countdown Initiative. There is a lot of interest here. So let us hear from our co-chairs about how we ensure that there is a great diversity on our team. Jessica, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, thanks, Jose. On the diversity side, we're trying our best to include diversity of expertise, but also regional, people's different knowledge base, where people are coming from. But we're really, we hope to expand a bit the collaborative nature of the countdown. We're bringing in more collaborators, but also doing a bit more reaching out to make sure we capture some of these other knowledge bases that people have. I think we represent almost every region in the world, if not every region. Yeah, but looking forward to ensuring that we become more inclusive as we move forward. We're doing our very best to get the best food system science people together, as well as capture that rich diversity that so many people bring to the space. And please do look out for our papers next year. We'll do an annual paper of the monitoring of the global food systems, as well as we'll have a paper next year looking at synergies and trade-offs, so interactions between these indicators, and the year after looking more at the performance of food systems and how well they're doing in a very cantankerous world that we're living in. So keep a lookout for these publications each year as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And of course, every kind of feedback that you can give to us in any kind of way that you can imagine is always important for us to keep improving what we have as the Food System Countdown Initiative. With this, and on behalf of my colleagues here as panelists, I would like to close this event. But of course, closing by saying that at the end, what we wanted to do with this initiative is to inspire. We wanted to inspire countries in order to develop their own national systems to monitor food systems transformation. We wanted to inspire the community at large to think about the idea that monitoring food system transformation is actually possible, that can be done with data that is already available. And of course, we want as well to make everybody to believe that it's actually possible to transform our food systems. So with that, thank you very much for your participation, for your attention. Thank you for all the panelists that have participated. And of course, thank you all of you for giving the time to be part of this webinar. Thank you and see you the next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.